kind of together. On the fourth section of the graft, one of the things I decided wanted to do was to make that connection with the block. The building sits on a block that has had quite a few African Americans from early on that lived on this block. So what I wanted to do was, and also AME, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, was on one end of the block at 4th and Park Street. And then catty corner across from the mural was Salem Baptist Church. They were the two oldest churches, two oldest African American churches in the community. AME being first and then Salem shortly after. So they kind of hold the corner, but they also kind of held the community in a way. So I wanted to show the church, at least show one of them. Since the mural was on the south side, I said, well, I'll just extend like I'm looking down as the way it used to look, and start putting them on. So starting at the corner is the Bethel AME Church. Then next to that was this little kind of log cabin that they had put siding on, and it's kind of set at the back of the lot. This old man used to live there when I was little. I remember him, but I don't remember him all that well. Then next to that was a house that was owned by a woman who gave piano lessons to the community. Her name was Miss Valentine. The next to that building, as you can see, is the next house is the house that belonged to my grandfather, Al Rivers. And Al Rivers was the first African-American police officer for Champaign. Behind what became the a rainbow would have been a house that was for Ernest Nelson, and he had inherited from his great-grandmother, right? His great-grandmother, right? Hester Ernest. And then across the street from that one that ended, and this is actually ends at the corner, was the Hines's house. Okay, and the Hineses had been there for a while, and the patriarch of the Hineses was a man by the name of Father Hines, Earl Father Hines, who was a very famous jazz musician. And at the bottom, you can see another one of my quick sketches, because I knew I wanted to do something with the cornfield, because cornfields, you know, the Champaign County cornfields and stuff. So I said, oh God, how am I going to do corns? So I went out, you know, into the fields, and I did this real quick sketch of corn so I get the feeling of the way that it fell. And as you can see at the very front, I also did a real quick sketch of a corn cob, so I could get kind of that feel before we started putting it onto the wall. And then this is the process of painting the third and the fourth sections of the mural. Now at this point here, what you see there, this was at the end of that, the kids had gone, and I had been working on it myself, especially the majority of all of the fourth section and the majority of the third section. I painted pretty much on my own. The kids had helped, but I started painting little bit by little bit. As I had time, I'd come over and I would paint. And then, and I continued on until I finished. And I finished in that October, so it took approximately 4 months to complete, to do the entire mural. And again, I still had to get the, all the materials out. I had to get the scaffolding up, put the scaffolding down. And some of my artist friends, in the morning they would meet me there and put the scaffolding up for me. And in the afternoon, when I was ready to go, I'd wait for them. They'd come back out after work and take it down for me. We would put it away. And of course, this was the finished mural. Now, there were several themes that went to the mural as well, so I'll talk a little bit about those themes. History begins in Africa. Remember I talked about they used kind of what kind of history did they want in it and where to begin. But they wanted to begin with ancient Egypt. And of course, then we talked about the great civilizations of West Africa and the caravanning between the Mediterranean coast and West Africa, and had been going on for thousands of years, and now we're looking at, so I decided to show the caravan as it would have been during the Middle Ages, and during the time that would have been the height of the Renaissance in Europe. And of course you see the Egyptian and the pyramids. Then we went to West African village. Always, these are symbolic. So the West African village is symbolic of West Africa, and the markets of Timbuktu. So you see a close-up of the markets of Timbuktu. So you have the ladies, and we moved from West Africa into the Sahel area. And then, of course, the Middle Passage. And I wanted to show the horrors of the Middle Passage by having this man, he's screaming in agony, you know, as he's being taken away. And then, of course, slavery. The major emphasis of the mural was the family. The family symbolized a lot of different things. For myself, the family symbolized my family moving into Champaign County. I wanted it basically at two levels. So my family moved in right after the Civil War. So we're talking about what I call the first migration into the county that happened after the Civil War until around 1900 or just after. And of course then we know of the Great Migration that happened starting at World War I and moving through until the Great Depression. And then there's the Second Great Migration that started during World War II and continued through the 1950s. So there's three processes of migration of African Americans into Champaign County, especially Champaign-Urbana. So the family represents kind of all three of them, but personally it represents my family and represents the families that came with my family or just shortly after, and some of the families that came before our family as well. Now it's interesting, as you can see, I had done a series of sketches to get kind of an idea of what it is that I wanted to do. So these are two of the sketches that I worked with. The old man, sketch of an old man that I did becomes the grandfather in the painting. Now the large eyes are intentional. The sketch of the father, that you only see the eyes